I have always felt most comfortable in the places between. Not one or the other, but both. Not an unsatisfactory compromise, but the sweet spot in contrast. Like Interfaith. I love nature and words. I love being and intellect. I love science and mystery. Contrast does not need to be diluted to meet. We just need to be open enough to hold them both. But having said that, I do love the places they overlap. Like when the ancient mystics and the quantum physicists speak of time. Apparently time is an illusion. If the ancient mystics and the quantum physicists agree, it must be true. Yet our experience is quite otherwise. The illusion seems pretty real. Birth, life, death, in that order. And yet truth is quantum, which is pretty weird. Here it is. In the entire divine cartography of space and time, from everything that went on before and everything that will go on after, we are here, in this holy moment. What will we do? What will we choose? The improbable truth is this, that what I choose in this moment will define my reality in the next. It is my choice, my observation that creates. Choose your reality, be it string theory, quantum physics, singularity, or Hafez. Since time is an illusion, everything that has ever lived is listening. And everything that will be is waiting on us to decide. To observe it and to speak it into existence. What will it be? No pressure. I dedicate my ministry to the husbanding of these holy moments, these holy sparks. I am midwife to the moment. But what does it mean to be midwife to the moment? The moment only fully becomes what it needs to be when I can speak it into existence by my presence, by my actions or my inactions in the holy pause. This is midwifing the moment. To speak from the divine substance, this is midwifing the moment. It is about being on the side of mystery, and it is about being awake. This is midwifing the moment. I am an artist. I am a landscape architect. I am a writer. I am a serial entrepreneur. And now I am an interfaith chaplain. As a chaplain, I can use all that I am to be midwife to the moment. And in turn, my chaplaincy is already informing my art, my landscape architecture, and everything. The truth is, I will need all that I have to do, all that I am, in order to do this. But I will also need my community. In closing, if I may quote one of my divine feminine coordinates, Irene, who is in turn reframing something her sister Shelley said. One of the truths we carry with us is that we can't do this work alone. We carry within us the knowledge that we must care for ourselves with the same all-encompassing love with which our community nourishes us. And it is this knowledge that allows us to approach the veil between the womb of Chi and the spiritual adventure ahead, knowing all is well and all will be well. Ram Dass said he thought that in the end, when all was said and done, we were all just walking each other home. Being a midwife to the moment is about walking you home. Blessed be, Aho, and to all my divine feminine coordinates I say, Go girls. Amen.
Each module at Chi, part of our opening ritual, includes reciting our covenant, a set of guidelines under which we commune. Guideline 3 states, we will respect our different learning and processing styles, making room for even the smallest, softest voice to be heard. Well, mine is one of those softest voices. That being said, as I've been on this journey with the divine and training for chaplaincy, I've learned that in order to be a professional chaplain, I needed to be a minister, and in order to be a minister, I needed to go to seminary, and part of seminary is training in sermon delivery or being a preacher. Well, I'm not a preacher, and I'm not going to give a sermon. But I am a storyteller, and I'd like to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a caterpillar. She was a small and timid caterpillar, going about her life quietly. She was aware of the value of the earth, the flora, the fauna, the cycles of the sun and moon and seasons. In her maidenness, she sang and danced and played and was peaceful in her simplicity. She felt a special connection to God, but was mystified by God's call to her. Years later, the caterpillar went into her cocoon. Inside of the cocoon, she was wrapped in darkness. She married one whom she loved for 3 decades. Although in her motherhood, she did not birth actual children, she did birth a wonderful career, which was ministry in disguise. She traveled to faraway places, and she survived a life-saving and life-altering operation. 2 more calls from God went unheeded in those years as she wrestled with the darkness. 7 years ago, the caterpillar made her way out of the cocoon, transformed. Entering her cronehood with the damp and crumpled wings of a young butterfly, she set her beloved free and began to repair the roots of her tree of life, never guessing where the divine was leading her. She began to know herself, where she came from, who she was, and what she might become. Her wings dried, and unfolding grew stronger. Exactly 2 years ago, that little butterfly had a 4th call from God. The call was to go to seminary at the Chaplaincy Institute. While at Chi, her focus shifted from what she had previously known as God to a larger understanding of what she now calls the divine. From the very sacred, scarf-headed outing to the mosque, to the chants and rhythms of the drums inside the muddy Native American sweat lodge, from Wiccan ritual to Buddhist meditation, From the light festival of Diwali to the folk music in the synagogue, the little butterfly became fuller and fuller with spirit. From the beautiful Arabic phrase, As-salamu alaykum, to Namaste. From the sparks of the divine to servant leadership. Her wings took on the palette of the rainbow, the colors of Interfaith. From tribal drumming on the djembe to the silence of contemplative prayer and yoga, the sacred surrounded her. From witnessing transgendering in process to the unexpected death of a teammate's spouse during a module, to the deep sadness of the Newtown, Connecticut tragedy, also during a module. She helped deepen her understanding and broaden her compassion. From the whirling dervishes of Sufism to eco-spirituality, she learned a little about many world faith traditions. She began to view her cocoon time no longer with harsh criticism, but with gratitude in the knowledge of what the cocoon had been preparing her for. For when we are ready to leave behind the caterpillar, it is then that we may become the butterfly. I am that butterfly. And today I stand before Holy Spirit and each of you, and I am aware of areas in my life that still need work. But I'm even more aware of the ministry that these wings will take me to. It shall not be a big and grand ministry, for mine are small and delicate wings. But it will be a ministry of bright, colorful wings, guided by the divine. Little papillon, little mariposa, little butterfly, fly.
I'd like to share a favorite little poem from St. Francis of Assisi, as translated by Daniel Ladinsky. I once spoke to my friend, an old squirrel, about the sacraments. He got so excited, he ran into the hollow of his tree and came running back holding some acorns, an owl feather, and a ribbon he had found. And I just smiled and said, "Yes, dear, you understand. Everything imparts her grace." A sacrament is a visible sign of an inward grace. Ordination is a sacrament that reflects a calling to ministry. Believe me, my own calling did not always feel like an inward grace. Sometimes it felt like a gift I was too scared or too embarrassed to claim. But I waited because I knew that someday I would have the courage. So here goes. I am called to wonder at the beauty and impossibility of a poppy coming up through the tiniest space between the rocks. I'm called to awe. The awe of seeing a red-tailed hawk sitting on a fence post not 10 feet away, looking at me closely before majestically flying away. I'm called to gratitude, an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the love and kindness of others, for the beauty and generosity of the earth, for the faith that God is real and also loves me. It is a gratitude that I cannot ignore, but must invite others into. Sometimes I'm called to silence, not often. And to prayer. I'm called to share myself with others, to patiently listen as if this was the first time that person had ever been heard. Because sometimes it is. I'm called to honor the darkness and believe it capable of bringing great light. Mary Oliver wrote, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift. I am called to honor all gifts. I'm called to love as the earth loves, to create and nurture life and hope whenever and wherever I can. I'm also called to recognize death and decay as a necessary part of the cycle of life. Didn't expect that. To be a friend to it when it visits. Because one thing turns into another and nothing ever stays the same. Nothing is permanent, but that's okay. Last but not least, I am called to paint, to color, to art, to music and poetry and movement, because they all bring moments of illumination when the divine sparks can be seen. Because we are all called to creation, and we are all called to recognize the divinity within us. Suddenly, accepting the inward grace and outward sign of the sacrament of ordination, I got the last one, doesn't feel like too much. It feels like that for which we were all born. To be consciously, divinely human. My calling has led me to become an artist, a spiritual director, and now an interfaith minister and chaplain, and I am filled with gratitude. I'm so deeply grateful to all of you who have been a part of my journey, for all of your love and support, for holding my hand or kicking me in the pants, whatever was necessary, and you know who you are. In closing, from the Buddha, the perfume of sandalwood, the scent of rose bay and jasmine travel only as far as the wind. But the fragrance of goodness travels with us through all the worlds. Like garlands woven from a heap of flowers, fashion your life as a garland of beautiful deeds. Thank you.
What beauty I follow in my ordinance sisters. I'm going to start with a shocking statement, and I hope none of you leave when I say this. Life is uncertain. Good, I didn't lose anybody. Okay, it's funny, but I've spent a lot of my life trying to avoid this fact of life. And it's also funny that as a chaplain, I feel it's our primary function to accompany those who are going through uncertain times and the fear that also tends to follow uncertainty, to accompany them through that journey of fear. And, you know, it sure helps when you're accompanying someone through that you have been through that before yourself. And so that's the part of the story that I'm going to tell you today of my life. My story really parallels in many ways the story of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I hope some of you remember it here because as she heads down the yellow brick road, do you remember who she meets first?
Scarecrow.
The Scarecrow. And do you remember what the Scarecrow so badly wants? A brain. And do you remember what he's afraid of? Fire. My traveling companion, the Scarecrow, my brain, was my first attempt at avoiding uncertainty. And so I got a lot of education, and I took really high-powered work, and I worked until I was burned. So on the path I went, down the yellow brick road, and you remember who Dorothy meets as her second traveling companion? Thank you, Zoe. The Tin Man. And the Tin Man is looking for heart. And you remember what the Tin Man is afraid of? Rusting, of getting stiff. And that's where I went next, really in my attempt to avoid uncertainty. Because I ended up in a hospital with the doctors telling me that my heart had literally stopped. And at that point, I didn't really know where else to go but faith. I learned recently that faith, in Greek, the root word is actually courage. And I feel like those two words can be used interchangeably. As Dorothy heads down the path, it's hard to forget her third traveling companion. Thank you, Zoe. The cowardly lion. And that was me at that point. I was so afraid of pretty much everything. And so, in faith practices, in meditation, in prayer, in shadow work, in yoga, I actually found those things that strengthen my courage. The courage to face my fears and to walk through them. And it seems like until we have the courage to face and walk